Today we welcome Mount Pearl, Newfoundland native. Big up for that. Brian Cheeseman, who's entering his 12th season with the Oil Kings as head athletic therapist. He has been a member of the Oil Kings for 2 championships and in 2014 a Memorial Cup championship. He's also served in the same capacity with Hockey Canada for a number of different events, including the U17 and U18 Ivan Halinka Memorial Tournament. He was also the athletic therapist for Team Canada in the WHL World Junior Hockey Championships for the first time in 2016, and in total has done this event 5 times, winning multiple medals, including gold along the way. Brian, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I think, the role of AT, I mean, for our coaches, and as we said, this is aimed at, the coaches and how they deal with it. Like, how would you define the role of AT in the greater context of a team?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I use the analogy of, a wheel, like a hub with the spokes. So taking the actual therapy and rehab and injury prevention part of it out of it, people in my role are the center of that wheel. And, we're the people that the players probably see the most, interact with the most, are likely the most comfortable to be around. As much as they see us as an employee of a hockey club or of a college or a school, we're almost that kind of big brother or big sister figure for them. So oftentimes it's a very comfortable place for them to come and talk about anything, about an injury, about life, about how they played. It's a very open door policy. And, if that AT and then the coaches have a good relationship, then coaches can glean a lot of information from the athletic therapists that, the players may not necessarily feel comfortable saying to them themselves. So that's kind of how it would all connect in that way, shape, and form. So yeah, I joked I'm the gatekeeper at our facility in Edmonton. Yeah. I'm the first person the guys see when they come in the morning, and I'm the last person they see as they leave in the day. And I pride myself on having that open door policy and having a good relationship with the group. So
now, how does that, and I've been with teams and know that that's, obviously very factual, like, generally the support staff, whether it's equipment guys or the ATs or just, a team liaison or people who just help support the actual playing group, they're the engine that makes the whole thing go. But how is that relationship for you in terms of that open door? How is it different from how you interact with players, coaches, or in your instance, I mean, you're dealing with high school kids just like we are, the parents in some instance?
I mean, you hear a lot, you see a lot, and you learn a lot every day from these guys. And as long as you don't kind of break that trust, it's a fine line. You walk a very fine line between things that you're confided in that, you keep between yourself and the player, or things that you're confided in that you think the coaches need to be aware of, or the parents need to be aware of, or our case in Edmonton here, billets need to be aware of. So you have that kind of filtering role as well. So I'm very fortunate with the group of coaches that we have in Edmonton and our billet network, and as well our parents, who are from anywhere from BC to Manitoba in our league. It's an open door policy with them too. Like, I make sure that if they need to be contacted for what may seem to be a small thing or a catastrophic event, an injury, et cetera, then the lines of communication are always open. And that's something I think that if it's reciprocal, if coaches have that same relationship with the AT or with the support staff or with the players and with the families and the billets, it limits the amount of, misinformation and miscommunication that can happen. And the more effective your communication is as a group, the better you're going to actually be able to perform.
Right. Now, how, like, let's say the logistics of that, like, are you meeting with coaches daily? Like what type of, what formal communication is it? And informally, obviously, probably ongoing, but what type of formal, rundown on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? How's that look like, your interaction with the coach?
So we meet as a staff every morning. This year I have a dual role. I do the strength and conditioning component for our club as well this year, because obviously due to COVID, We're limited how many people we can have in our bubble. So I've taken on that strength and conditioning kind of consultant role. I wouldn't say a coaching role, but so I meet with our coaches and the rest of our staff every day and get a feel for what the day is going to be like, what their practice plan is going to be. Is it going to be a high intensity practice? If it is, then I kind of tailor my workouts to be a little bit more movement, mobility oriented. If it's going to be a day where, it's more systems oriented on the ice, then I know I can structure a decent lift for the guys in the gym. So we meet first thing in the morning, get a feel for the day, talk about guys that, potentially are injured, are coming back from an injury, with our compressed schedule and our players not really haven't played any structured hockey in almost a year back when we started in February. Just keeping an eye on the guys to make sure their energy levels are good, that nobody is, approaching a danger zone for increased risk of injury because they're practicing too much, they're playing too much, and so on and so forth. So our coaching staff is phenomenal, and I'm very lucky that I have the working relationship and the personal relationship I do with them, because it allows us to have some open and honest dialogue every day. And they do take what I say, at face value, and they offer feedback, and it allows some constructive dialogue to happen. And ultimately we all are, using the analogy, pulling the rope in the same direction, and we want what's best for the players, and we want to be able to perform the best we can on the ice and practice and games. So those daily meetings definitely go a long way towards keeping things moving. And then obviously as we need to, if guys are injured, it's going to happen. It's not an if, it's a when. And discuss timelines with them, because the first question the coaches always ask, and they wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't, is, well, when's he available? When can he practice? When can he skate? When can we get him back in the lineup? So again, it's as an AT, it's kind of, there are some environments where a lot of people in my position probably feel a little bit of pushback from coaches, to rush players back. And I can honestly say, with the setup that we have in Edmonton with our medical staff and our coaching staff, it's never a rush. They're respectful of the timelines, and if we can get somebody back early, then that's a bonus. But we'll do it safely, right?
Yeah, and I guess that was kind of the follow up in terms of the challenges of bringing players back. Like, let's remove this year because of the the unique situation you guys are being in a bubble and a compressed schedule. But what are the, when you set that timeline, like how does that get created? Like, what are your goals when you set a timeline for an athlete to return? Like, what's priority number one?
So the biggest thing that I want my athlete to be able to do, and I know you have some fantastic therapists there at the college as well, who are also Sheridan grads, much like myself. So, you want to make sure that the player can return to, the level of activity they were at before they got injured. Now, timelines for injuries vary, and they vary even more from individual to individual. So, case in point, your rehab time might be 4 to 6 weeks. If you were injured, mine might be 6 to 8. But within that window, if you can, overpromise and underdeliver, if you say 6 weeks and you get a guy back in 4 or a girl back in 4, and they're able to do everything they need to do safely and effectively, they're as strong or potentially stronger than they were pre-injury, then that's kind of the markers that we look for here. So, rushing people back, I've never had to do it, but you look at different case studies across sport, and if you don't adhere to those timelines and you push somebody to get back too quick, then you run the risk of re-injury or worse, right? Yeah. So you gotta, it's tricky because, the player is the hardest one to manage. The coaches are very easy to manage because you give them the timelines, and they are going to question you periodically. Well, is he ready? Is she ready? But the athlete is always going to say, man, I feel great today. Yeah. Like, can I do this? Well, no, because I don't think you can do that yet. Right. So it's
you're dealing with athletes, you've got a range, you've got, rookies who are trying to prove themselves. You've got 17-year-olds who are worried about an NHL draft, and you've got guys who have potentially, they've been drafted or trying to get a contract. And then you've got a collection of guys who don't have a contract, weren't drafted, who are trying to get one. So how do you balance, all of those different aspirations, their health, managing the coach? Like, how does that juggling act, get maintained in your perspective?
It all boils down to trust. It's trust between the therapist and the athlete. It's trust between the therapist and the coaching staff, and trust between the coaching staff and the athlete as well, right? So if you can make that circular and everybody is on the same page and of the same understanding that, yeah, we want you back, but we want you back when you're healthy, strong, and ready to be back. And it's, we touched on it a few minutes ago, sending somebody back too early doesn't do the athlete any good. It could hurt their chances of being drafted. It could hurt their chances of being signed. It could lead to potential long-term injury in the case of a drafted or signed NHL player, and they're not able to attend their camp that following fall. I mean, obviously that's worst case scenario, but
yeah,
those are all things that I present to the athletes when they're injured, and we talk to it on a case-by-case basis, and they trust what I'm telling them is accurate, and that I have their best interests in mind, and I trust that they're going to be doing the things that I'm asking them to do in order to get back to that level that we need them to be back at.
Now, I mean, I pushed it to the side, but I mean, COVID and all the restrictions have added a number of layers, I'm sure, as an AT, but probably even more layers on the front part that you said about being the gatekeeper. So give me some insight as, what's it like being an AT on a team that's playing during COVID in Canada? Like what are, what's the rundown? Like, you're your first guy in, like, are you managing check-ins and all this different stuff?
So we, as a league, we use a daily COVID symptom and temperature checking app. So all of our staff, all of our billets, all of our players, each day, as soon as they get up in the morning, they run through a quick symptom checklist. And then they do a temperature self-check. And if anybody gets flagged on their own app, I get a notification right away to my phone.
Yeah.
And I'll reach out to them and say, hey, is this accurate? Are you feeling okay? A lot of time it's operator error. It's I clicked yes when I should have clicked no, or I forgot the decimal, my temperature, and I'm actually not reading 365 degrees right now. So that's the first layer of it. And then our league, we do weekly PCR testing. So we get swabbed on Wednesday of every week. We're very fortunate with the facility that we have. We play out of the same arena and the same facility as the Oilers. So we're able to use the same testing company that they use, the NHL uses, the WHL used. So very fortunate there. We get our results back in 12 hours, which is great. So knock on wood right now, we haven't had anybody test positive, but again, with COVID, it's like talking about an injury. It's not an if, it's a when, right? It's very prevalent right now. It's becoming more and more, it's being spread more and more now in the so-called third wave. So, it's an added layer of stress and an added layer of responsibility, but we have a league-wide protocol that we adhere to, and it's laid out, it's cut and dry, it's very easy to understand. My players have been fantastic, my billets have been amazing at it, and our coaching staff's buy-in as well, which has been key from day one, has been we will do whatever it takes to A, start this season, B, keep it going, and C, get it across the finish line. So
now what about, like, you've dealt with players in numerous seasons and like some high pressure events, obviously with world championships and whatnot, but how have you found the layer of all these external stressors of COVID and just the isolations and all the different things? Have you noticed some effects on the athletes?
Yeah, for sure. It's they're creatures of habit. Anybody, doesn't matter your sport, but we'll talk specifically about hockey because that's what I'm most familiar with. Like, they love hanging out together, right? And the hardest part with COVID is anybody, athlete, staff member, official, so on and so forth, billet, is not being able to do that normal day-to-day routine, not being able to go out to restaurants and so on and so forth, to keep the integrity of the bubble and the integrity of the protocol intact. So the only time our guys really hang out together is at the arena. And again, doubling back on the wonderful facility we have, we've been able to set up a really good player lounge area for them where they can play ping pong, they can play video games together. They can hang out in that structured environment and make sure that we are still adhering to these protocols. And, they've handled it like champs. I mean, it's, I'll give these guys credit. Curveball after curveball have been thrown their way, with our season being canceled last March. The postponement and continual postponement at the start of the season, and they just roll with the punches, man. And I think it's a testament to kids, of that age, that it's a challenge and they're willing to take it on. They're willing to accept it. And, getting back to what they do in order to continue doing what they love, they're willing to adhere to that protocol and do whatever it takes to be able to hang out with their buddies like that. So,
right. And have you noticed, has there been any effect in terms of so they are rolling with the punches, and that's awesome. Have you seen, has it impacted the on-ice product at all? Do you see kids are more frustrated? Are they a little bit more, testy? Is the intensity level during the games, because there's such a release there? Do you find any of those effects that are happening?
Yeah, I think they're trying to squeeze as much into these 24 games as they possibly can. I mean, emotionally and physically. We recently started doing 3 games in 4 nights, and you can tell there's a significant drop off at that third game at the end of intensity and effort, and which is normal because they haven't been exposed to this level of emotional intensity or physical intensity for almost a calendar year. But, to their credit, they've taken it on, and they want to make the most out of what they're given. And I think if you told these guys, you're going to get 24 games and maybe there's going to be playoffs, maybe there isn't, but it's an opportunity again for them to be back with their buddies and be back in that environment that they love and they thrive in. And they've just taken it and run with it. So and you know what, for us, I think winning helps. I mean, right now we've only lost 1 game this year, and we have a really good team. And I think that's driving a lot of it. I would be a lot tougher, I think, on you from a mental standpoint and an emotional standpoint if you weren't having on-ice success. So I think that definitely helps with it.
Right. Now, we touched on it briefly, but I wanted to get, what was the marathon? It seemed like a marathon, you guys, with the World Junior team this year. Obviously, it was in your hometown your current hometown. What was it like going through that process? There was a bit of a hiccup at the beginning, and then you get into the event, and it all went very smoothly. I think there was a lot of, doubters when we had a couple cases that, caused things to kind of slow down a little bit. But, what was that experience like? You've been to the event without any of these things, but, was this one, it was obviously very unique, but, how different was the experience compared to a normal year?
Well, I mean, like anything Hockey Canada does, it's top shelf. It's the cream of the crop. It's an unbelievable experience to be a part of as an athlete or as a support staff member. And they do a fantastic job of taking care of everybody. And, that was really evident this year when we had an unfortunate incident where we had a couple of cases come up during our development camp. We had to switch back to an online camp, and we isolated and quarantined for 14 days, and management, coaches, support staff, and the players were all involved in how do we want our day-to-day to work. So, we had guest speakers, we had virtual workouts, we had virtual spin classes, virtual yoga. Guys were playing cards. We did a Bob Ross style paint night one night. And from the outside, you could tell there's always a lot of static and a lot of rumbling, and people are saying, this team they're in isolation for 14 days, and how are they going to play, and how's it going to affect them? And honestly, it was our greatest advantage at the tournament was that 14 days brought that group of players and staff together like nothing I'd ever seen before. And when we got into the pressure cooker that is the World Junior Tournament, there was nothing that could that was thrown at us that we weren't, prepared for, because we had already had an experience that drew everybody tighter together than any other nation. So, unfortunately, the outcome wasn't what we all wanted to, but what we all wanted it to be. Yeah. But that isolation, I think, was a definite advantage over any other country. And, it's a shame because that team deserved a better ending than we got, unfortunately. And who knows, maybe there's some guys that will be eligible to come back next year who can kind of rewrite that final chapter of that book and get that gold medal in Edmonton.
Yeah. Now the previous events, you won gold. Is it 2017?
2018 in Buffalo.
18 in Buffalo. Like, what's that feeling? I mean, like, it's become such a iconic event in Canada, and I think to be fair, it seems like it's growing globally as well. Like, it's more recognized in the U.S. and the Europeans have always liked it, obviously, but it's a massive thing here in Canada. Like, what was that feeling? Like, you watch it as a kid, and we all have, and you get into that final game, and kind of what was that? What was that all about? Like,
Honestly, man, it was incredible. Like the year before, being a part of the team that lost in the shootout in Montreal to the Americans, and the players that were brought back from that group and the staff that were brought back from that group, myself included. First of all, it was an honor to be asked to do it again, but to have that extra little bit of motivation to know you were so close to that dream that everybody has, whether you're a player, a coach, a therapist, an equipment manager, a team liaison, to be able to get back together in Buffalo and have it finally happen. Like the day of the gold medal game, where our dressing room was situated in the rink, down the hallway, you could hear the Canadian fans coming into the building and singing "Oh Canada," an hour and a half before puck drop, and just looking at my therapy partner Kevin Elliott in the treatment room, saying, "Man, this is unreal. Like we're gonna win." And to win it how we did with a guy like Tyler Steenbergen, who was our 13th forward, who'd hardly played, who was out there in the late minutes of the game, and for him to score the goal. And I'm not one to celebrate ever on a bench mid game, but man, like I couldn't help it. I completely lost it at that point. And the coolest part of it all is being able to stand on the blue line shoulder to shoulder with your players and your staff, and everybody's arm in arm, and you're singing "Old Canada" on key and off key and everywhere in between to the top of your lungs as you watch the flag raise. It's incredible. It was definitely a bucket list experience for me, and hopefully it'll happen again down the road. So
Now, were you slated to do it this year, or did it just work out because of it was in Edmonton and obviously your history and your experience that was like, we let's get Brian in. Were you slated to be part of the staff like last spring?
Yeah, so I got a call back in June from Scott Salmon at Hockey Canada, asking me if I was interested in, like you have to ask. I mean, the answer is always going to be yes. And, from there, I was able to work in the NHL playoff bubble here in Edmonton as well. So that allowed me to get some good insights to bring to the table for when we started planning for the event. And, working that event during COVID with the NHL playoffs in the same building with essentially the same kind of testing regime and the same people being around that were going to be there for the IHF, I think made the transition for me as a staff member, the rest of our staff and players, kind of very easy when the time came to move up to Edmonton. So, it would have been really cool to win that last game, but unfortunately, the Americans were better than us that night. And, maybe the opportunity comes up again this year. Fingers crossed it does. And, if it doesn't, then I have no problem being a good resource for whoever comes into that role and whoever has questions about how to operate an event in COVID times in that building. So
you got to think you got a lot of cachet now. You've stepped up to the plate in probably the most challenging, circumstances. So you can probably write your ticket, I would think, these days. For them at least, you're the guy. I would think. I would hope so, at least.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to add a little thing onto my business card or on my job title, like bubble hockey expert or something.
Yeah, COVID bubble hockey expert, exactly.
I did the math. I spent 118 nights in a hotel from July 22nd to January 6th of this past year and a bit. Wow. So, it's a lot of Marriott points, but nowhere to go spend them right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's too bad. So I guess for our St. Andrews coaches, obviously, who are listening, they'd probably be interested. Alex Newhook, fellow Newfoundlander as well, but he's an old boy, St. Andrews, and tell us a little bit about you obviously did you know him before the event at all?
No, I'd never met Newey. Like, I'd obviously heard a lot about him, and getting to know him very well during the quarantine period in Red Deer, and then unfortunately he got hurt during the tournament, but our medical staff was able to get him back, and for him to score like that first game back from injury, and just to see
he was great that game too.
He was so good, and his teammates wanted nothing more for him than to just just to play, let alone score. And he scored and he came back to the bench, and you can see all the players they just envelop him and they're patting him. We're like, don't hit him too hard, he's hurt. But he was just a character kid and a class act. And, we still keep in touch a lot
Awesome.
post event. And, hopefully I can run into him back home at some point here.
Well, I told him that when he signed his deal a couple of weeks ago, obviously wish him well, and he's on Hook for tickets. When the problem is here in Toronto, I think I'll be at the bottom of the list of different family and whatnot, because Toronto's really easy to get to. So maybe you'll get the hook on the Edmonton tickets when he rolls into town.
Yeah, I might have to get on him a little bit about that one. So
yeah, fair enough. That's the price you pay when you're an old boy of St. Andrews and you have tickets. So I'll come asking, that's for sure. So well, I really appreciate you joining us, Brian. I think it's important. You touched on our ATs here at St. Andrews. We're lucky to have professional and qualified staff, and that interaction between the ATs and any other support people is, as I said to you before, really the kind of the engine that makes the group perform. And the more functional and harmonious and positive and open those relationships are, the better the team's going to be. And I'm sure you've seen that in your experience. So really thank you for touching on that and joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.